Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass. Thank you for watching this Ag Forecast brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Well, if we start by taking a look at the weather all hazards map from weather.gov, we can really see here that on Thursday, the map is quite colorful, especially around the center part of the country. We have a very active jet stream right now, and what we're seeing right up and down the center part of the country is a lot of high wind warnings. We have frost and freeze advisories, we have hard freeze warnings, and then even up here in parts of Minnesota and in parts of North Dakota, we've got our first winter storm watches. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. So let's kind of take a look at what the overall pattern is that's causing this very active weather. It starts with the jet stream. So here what you're looking at is the really pesky trough that has been plaguing the eastern Corn Belt for the last several days. In fact, I was talking about this in our video update on Sunday night into early Monday morning as being our big problem for the week. And why this one's causing so much trouble is basically its orientation. You see the winds coming into the trough are almost coming straight from the north, and then going out of the trough, they're going back to the north from the south. And because this trough lacks a strong west to east component, it's just taken forever to move out of the way. So that's what's really cool things down around the eastern half of the country. This is what's really slow to harvest down just due to persistent nagging rains here across the eastern part of the Corn Belt. But an interesting thing to think about with this overall flow pattern is this huge ridge that's out west. So while the trough digs in cold and really kind of wet in the east, big ridge out west develops. And that ridge out west has had an interesting impact on the World Series. So it's kind of neat. There's been a lot of research done to understand if it's easier to hit a home run based upon different weather conditions. And basically, hot and humid days are actually the easiest to hit home runs, and simply because the air density is low. So the ball actually can carry several more feet. And we've actually seen in the first two games of the World Series 11 home runs. And that's certainly, one of the factors there is the very, very warm conditions in LA, where we saw on the opening pitch on the first night 103 degrees. So I thought you might like just to know that beyond affecting agriculture, big trough ridge patterns like this can also affect America's pastime. Okay, let's get into the forecast. What we're looking at here is an animation going out for the next 10 days showing us the overall position and kind of flow of the jet stream. So let's kind of get this paused here, come right back to the beginning and see what we got to deal with. Well, you can see that by Thursday into Friday, we keep seeing this trough kind of reload with colder air, and it keeps coming back through the flow multiple times, while the ridge occupies much of the west. So the western U.S. stays warm, and this trough just keeps digging again and again. In fact, by Friday, we have our next big shot at some colder air. You see that kind of hangs around for our weekend. But watch, another lobe comes through just like this. And those are also going to be the two features that give us our next couple of chances for precipitation across parts of the Corn Belt, really focusing in on the east. We don't really see that whole pattern breaking down till we get about 9 or 10 days out in the forecast, where we start to see a deeper trough developing here off of the west coast, maybe pushing a ridge in the central states. But I think that's also temporary, as we expect maybe for November to carry with it a bit of a cool bias, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. So those are kind of the bigger features we're watching in the near term. Now watch what our temperatures are going to do. Here are early morning on Thursday, the temperatures, and what we're going to see as we move forward here, look at the cold air coming in. So this is with that first big lobe of that trough kind of moving through the Corn Belt and over toward the eastern part of the country. So this is Friday morning's low temperatures. Then we're getting into Saturday. Here's Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And here comes that second shot as each one of those, troughs keeps going around that big, deeper, upper level feature one after another. So we've got some cooler weather. Basically the entirety of the Corn Belt will be getting frost. So any location that hasn't yet had it will be experiencing that. So this is what's kind of driving our temperatures in the short term. Now, in terms of precipitation, and this is the bigger factor for this time of year, here's what we're watching through Sunday. So let this play over again here. What we're watching is the development of a low pressure system that's going to go through the Great Lakes, and it's going to drag a pretty long cold front that's going to bring in some chilly air, Thursday night, Friday into Saturday across the kind of the whole of the Corn Belt. I want you to see something kind of neat here. If I pause this, right in through here is kind of this big area of elongated low pressure. Now this is valid in the afternoon on Thursday. As we move forward, this isn't able to tap into this Gulf moisture, basically due to the presence of this big dome of high pressure center here, until that front gets passed mostly through Illinois. And it's at that point that we're going to expect to see the front. This is going to be very early in the day on Friday, being able to pick up enough moisture to start kicking off some showers and storms. And those are going to go racing across the eastern Corn Belt, a location that's been quite wet. Now, on the back side of this thing, this big comma-shaped precipitation field, it's going to be cold enough here for some snow. Let's kind of take a look at how much snow we're talking about. Here's an animation going out the next 10 days showing us total snow accumulation. So you can see really coming in on Friday, Saturday, a little bit on Sunday, we're seeing that snow really accumulate. So by the time we stop this here on Sunday, we've got a pretty broad area here from a ½ inch to 3 inches. And the problem is going to be that as this snow falls, it's going to be quite windy, causing for some pretty rough conditions, pretty rough time for some folks. I would expect to see some areas here maybe getting over maybe 2 to 3 inches. Might have a couple of pockets here of 3 or 4 inches of snow. But remember, the ground is still warm enough that a lot of this, when it does hit the ground, will melt with time. But that's at least what we're looking at in terms of snowfall. So primarily, parts of the Dakotas, but mainly Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan. Now, I don't know if you saw this, but in that previous animation, we were watching a tropical system. Thankfully, because of the troughs that keep coming around this big upper level feature here, whatever's going to come out of the Caribbean here, it looks like it's going to get kicked off toward the north and east, maybe brushing through Florida, bringing some heavier rain down here. But other than that, this isn't going to be one that's going to come up into the Corn Belt, at least as we can tell right now. So if we just take a step back and look at our next 10 days of total accumulated precipitation, really what we see here is because of where that trough is located and where these next two systems go through, we're going to have a pretty big section of the middle part of the country that doesn't see much precipitation over the next 10 days. The northern tier states, getting into parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, are certainly going to be seeing it. And then as that front moves through, we can see that the eastern Corn Belt does get quite a bit of precip. And then all of this down here is from that tropical system, which we just mentioned. So this is our next 10 days as forecast by the ECMWF model. All right, if I kind of had to just break this down into weeks, and let's get ourselves pretty deep into November here. Here's what I'm watching. Big, thick arrow. Here's the overall position of the jet stream for week 1 and part of week 2. So this is really the next 10 days. We've got a few systems to watch. The first one, which is one coming through this weekend, takes a path like this, and it's responsible for most of the precipitation I've shielded here. We're watching that second system after this one. It's an Alberta Clipper coming in just like this, moving pretty quickly through the northern tier states, giving a second shot of precip here. But I think it's going to be overall a pretty dry next 10 days or so for the region I'm kind of highlighting here, while the eastern Corn Belt stays wet. And again, here's that tropical system we mentioned. We talk about weeks 2 and 3. It's kind of tricky to pick out the overall pattern, but I'm getting some kind of model convergence on an idea of a ridge developing in the southeast and a broader trough feature at times across much of the Corn Belt. But it looks like it's going to be drier inside of that trough, where and basically our wetter region is going to be here where we move out of the trough and over this ridge. So maybe the eastern Corn Belt continues to struggle with getting the crop out this year simply due to too much precipitation. So we'll keep a closer eye on this overall pattern. I will say this, for the northern tier states that I'm kind of circling here, I certainly do not see a warm November shaping up at this point. So with that, let's turn our attention quickly to South America. What we're watching is the next 10 days of total accumulated precipitation. And we're seeing a couple of things here. One, we are bringing rain, quite a bit of it, back into Mato Grosso, and this is going to certainly ease some of the worry about the late planting going on here and some of the precipitation stresses. And we can even see that we're getting some rain over in the eastern parts of where they plant a lot of soybeans in South America. Furthermore, getting down here a little bit farther to the south, again, we've talked about this 3 days ago, quite a bit of precipitation still in the forecast here for those southern Brazilian growing regions as well. But overall, these rains at this point are actually favorably seen. We're bringing in precipitation at the right time, which is what we really want to be kind of keying in on here. But some delays with planting still kind of reverberating through this, but this is at least a better picture to paint than otherwise. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and wrap up this video. We hope you look forward to Agrible's next ag forecast coming out on Monday. Get morning farm report for your operations, complete with a daily email that shows you a snapshot of your field conditions each morning. Go to morningfarmreport.com. Sign up for that free account. Full grower accounts are free if you sign up for our Sustainable Yield program or for growers who work with 80 merchandisers. Look forward to talking again after the weekend.